In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the first time in history the Chicago Bears have fired a coach mid-season. But first, like their sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Season is going on right now, so make sure you head on over to icehogs.com. Get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Oh, Alex, is there anything new going on?
Let's see. Well, I ate a lot of food yesterday on Thanksgiving, and I had some good time with family. Oh, and today happened to be Black Monday on Black Friday for the Chicago Bears for the first time ever.
Yeah, so Matt Eberflus got the axe, and it sucked because I was so angry last night, and I got a 12-hour Twitter ban. So I couldn't retweet or like or post anything.
Were you able to look at the feed at all? Were you able to
Oh,
scroll through?
I could look at everything, and but I couldn't even like anything. It was just that was it, done.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's the thing. Remember last night when I texted you, I think he's gone tomorrow? You
Yeah,
remember that?
I do.
Here's the thing. We know the Chicago Bears have never done this before in the century-long history of the franchise. And I get it, there were plenty of decades where the coach was George Halas. But still, you think of the past 20, 30 years, ever since Ditka got let go. You have Dave Wanstedt, that didn't work. You have Dick Duran, that didn't work. You had Lovey, it did work, but eventually that ended. Then you had Mark Trestman. That didn't work. You had John Fox. That didn't work. You had Matt Nagy. That didn't work. And then you had Matt Eberflus. That didn't work. Throughout all those coaching tenures, and let's just look at the past few, like a Mark Trestman, a John Fox, and a Matt Nagy. Let's look at those three guys. You and I could look at certain games over that tenure where you could say, yeah, the head coach needs to go, right? Like we could point out several games during that time. But yesterday was different. Yesterday was the definition of it is impossible to go back. Like it's not possible in any way, shape, or form. The players were pissed off. Really, really pissed off. You had the Hall of Famer Jimmy Johnson on the post game saying this is the most dysfunctional team that he's ever seen. This is Jimmy Johnson saying that. You had all the analysts on television. I mean, Tom Brady was talking about it. Jim Nantz was talking about it. Everyone was talking about it.
Former Super Bowl winning head coach Bill Cowher also talked about how
Yes,
a coaching job it was.
yes, everybody. Look at what Keenan Allen said in the post game. I mean, there was absolutely no way you could go back to that after that. That you want to talk about point of no return, and we've seen the point of no return many times with this regime. Whether it was the three historic losses last year, hell, I thought the point of no return was last year in Detroit with that blown game. And then I thought the point of no return was the Cleveland loss. And then I really thought the point of no return was the Hail Mary. And that Hail Mary derailed everything. Absolute that ripple effect was huge. They never rebounded. And they found, under Matt Eberflus, every way possible to lose a game. Every single way. You lost on a Hail Mary. You lost on a blocked field goal. You lost on blown coverage in overtime. You lost on the clock running out without taking a timeout. Like every creative way you could lose, You found a way to lose over these past few years. Like, it is insane how many absurd losses you went through. And last night, that was biblical proportions.
I do
Everybody knew it was over.
I do want to say, for as bad as the losses were on the field, and all those losses that you mentioned were like fireable offenses,
Hmm.
I'm going to be honest, is the post-game press conference from all of those might have been worse.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, look at yesterday, Matt Eberflus. Oh yeah, I liked the process. I liked our approach. You had a timeout. You had a timeout. And yes, your rookie quarterback didn't do so good in those last 30 seconds, okay? He changed the play at the last second, knowing that you weren't going to be able to stop the clock. He could have called a timeout, but it is your responsibility as the head coach to step in and be the head coach. And he didn't. He
I'm
pulled a
going
Mitch McConnell.
I am going to say with Caleb Williams, I don't think he had confidence in the coaching staff. He didn't think that play could go off and he audibled it
Right.
and sure it didn't go as but you have a rookie quarterback that you put a bad coaching staff around and what do you think's going to happen? And
Right.
and he said, I don't feel like I am in a position where I could have made that timeout. And his head coach should be making that timeout.
100%.
I forgot who it was.
100%.
Forgot who it was. It was somebody that, was a former player and a commentator said that, or maybe it was the one of the officials that does the broadcasting now, but they said the officials will look in those situations to the coaching staff because
Hmm.
that's how it comes.
Hmm.
So how can you blame a 23-year-old rookie when your head coach has a history before he was in the NFL or before your quarterback was in the NFL of being bad at clock management?
Yeah, and can we also add the fact that the cherry on top yesterday was you had another really bad, dumb challenge?
That's a fireable offense there, how bad he is at challenges. I mean, he even said that he throws challenges when they're big plays and he just doesn't like them. Like
Uh, uh, How does that make sense?
it's his defense has quit on him. You can tell that by just the gashing runs. That defense quit on him. And uh he's so bad at clock management. He's lost that locker room. And I'm gonna tell you, if anybody says otherwise, I'm gonna give you one player's uh responses that say otherwise.
Jaquan Brisker.
Jaquan Brisker, when the press conference went on, it was just a laughing emoji as a tweet. And then when when he was fired, Jaquan Brisker tweeted out, "God don't make mistakes."
Yep, and he tweeted that right away. It was
Right.
as soon as the news broke.
Yeah, both of those timed up with events.
Yeah. And there's one thing we still haven't even gotten to. Well, there's a few things, but just remember the guy who is going to be your interim head coach, most people didn't know who he was 3, 4 weeks ago because you fired the offensive coordinator that your head coach hired. The
Yep.
Shane Waldron thing was clearly a disaster. And you saw the looks of the faces of Caleb Williams and DJ Moore. And again, it's similar to Eberflus. He might be a nice guy, good family man, sure. He's someone you'd like to have as your neighbor and invite over to dinner. But when it comes to being a head coach in the National Football League or an offensive coordinator in the National Football League with the most important quarterback you ever had, it ain't a fit nowhere near close to that. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing that now Thomas Brown, who is just a guy that a lot of people didn't even know, is now going to be your interim head coach. When we were talking back with the Hail Mary loss and, the first real speculation of Eberflus being fired this year, everyone kind of just turned to Richard Hightower as being the interim head coach. It's going to be Thomas Brown.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, on the one hand, he's the most likely to be a candidate for head coach.
Right.
So you want to see how that plays out for the
Yeah, it's
last
not going to be
couple
Richard Hightower.
No. Um, so that means that he's actually on their short list. But it's he's a young coordinator. You want to see him cook with Caleb and continue that growth. So you want him focusing on that rather than focusing on being a head coach. So now he's going to be the a interim head coach and interim offensive coordinator and call the plays too. Or are they going to promote somebody to call the plays?
I'd really like him to call the plays.
I would like him too, but like how are
But he
you?
doesn't have the same angle anymore.
Well,
He's going to be on field level.
yeah, he's gonna have to be field level unless he has some sort of proxy on the field, which would be weird.
Maybe he'll be on your puking stilts.
I mean, like I've seen that in college with the proxy, but that was it Joe Paterno when he broke his leg that he had a proxy on the field, and that was just an odd situation. But it's just not a real thing. So like he's gonna have to be on the field, so it's gonna be a different dynamic. So I don't know if it just doesn't seem well thought out. And is it or is it not the most Bears slash McCaskey thing to ever happen? Is you parade him out to let him do his press conference and then wait
Oh, what a
half hour to
joke.
fire. How how amateur does that make this organization look?
That's something that I would love to hear what Kevin Warren has to say. Like, I want him to answer for it. He's not going to, but if I had to sit down with him, I'd say, look, why the hell did you do that? Because in my heart of hearts, they made that decision last night. Like, I think Ryan Poles made that decision last night. Did you hear the report about how Kevin Warren had extended talks with Caleb Williams and you could tell things and operations were different in the locker room? There were things being leaked out. There are accounts on Twitter that normally you wouldn't think twice of, but they seem to nail on every single thing. Where I do think they have credible sources, I think these wheels were put in motion last night. I really do. And maybe it was a matter of fact of just getting the final blessing from the McCaskies. I don't know. But if this was such in flux, why even bother having that press conference? And the other thing, too, was number one, you didn't release that link to the media until late, which caused a lot of speculation. And two, it was a very short meeting. Very, very, very short. There was something clearly going on there.
I don't know if you saw Kyle Long, former Chicago Bears, tweet about the situation.
No, I didn't. What'd he say?
So Peter Schrager tweeted, the fact that Eberflus did two different media sessions, post game and this morning, then was fired is particularly unique. And Kyle Long responded, George and company didn't know how to do this, but they knew they wanted to and had to do it. Probably had to wake and pray on it for real.
I believe it.
That seems like the most accurate picture of what happened is that is they were I'm guessing Kevin and Warren and Ryan Poles went into George and said, we need to fire him. And he said, I'm with you. Let me sleep on it. And woke up this morning and told them sometime after the press conference. And they didn't have an answer. So what are they going to do if they cancel the press conference? What answer did they give? So I think they sent them out and then George afterwards, and then they had to kind of scramble.
I think you're probably right. I think you are probably right. And it goes to show that even with quote good intentions that the McCaskies have, they have no business being in this cutthroat business. None.
My other scenario of what happened was is that George was waiting for his dinner to be cooked and he was doing his coloring and he heard all of the uproar and he snapped his purple crayon and looked all startled. And then when he looked back down and saw the snapped crayon, he lost it. And it was like, this man has to be fired and pay for this.
I picture George lifting up the two ends of the crayon and like his face getting like tomato red, like a cartoon, like where the head like swells and the vein pulses, sweat drips down, his face is just
Even
pure
shooting
red.
out of his ears.
Like a
Ah,
freaking
mother.
now that scenario is truly believable. But in all seriousness, I I I could totally see that being the case. Which what if George
I
McCaskey wants Kevin Warren to run the team, then I think that if they say we want to fire him, Kevin Warren, fire him.
do you remember when Ryan Poles was announced as the general manager for the Chicago Bears? Two things that George McCaskey said is that the new general manager will report directly to me,
Mm-hmm.
and he will be 100% in charge of football decisions.
Mm-hmm.
He said those two things, correct? I'm not
He
crazy.
did. Yes.
So, number one is it's multiple sources with much more knowledge and connections in that building have said that Ryan Poles reports to Kevin Warren. So that was backtracked on. And I understand why it would be, but that's why would you publicly say that and then like several months later just flip on it? Number two is if football decisions are up to Ryan Poles, then why does George need the blessing to fire the head coach?
Well, that's my whole thing. It is look, if Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles say we need to move on, they should have full power to do that. Say, okay, that's it.
I mean, it's one thing to give him George a heads up.
Well,
Like,
of
hey,
course.
hey, boss, we're doing this, just giving you the heads up. Like,
Right.
all right, maybe he wants input on the spin on it or the timing of it, maybe. But but you got to at
You
least
have to
heads
be
up.
a you have to have a completely numb skull to watch that game, to see how it unfolded, to see how the players reacted, to be convinced of anything. I mean, truly.
And here's the thing is not this week, but the last week, the last home game, George went into the tailgating and
He
talked to
did.
fans. And and I know that he has security that goes beforehand and tells everybody to be respectful in their questions, blah blah blah. But like he went in, he knows what those fans think. Like George knows what the fans think. George, we can both attest to this. He reads those letters that we write to him.
He does. Yes, he wrote both of us back. To his credit, most owners would not do that.
So he knows what fans think and how the fans are feeling. And he still didn't pull the trigger until just a debacle that was so bad that there is not a single NFL media not talking about what an embarrassment that is.
Right, exactly. And I want to make this point too. Had the Bears stopped the clock and tied that game on a field goal and sent it to overtime, Matt Eberflus is still here, no matter what. I could guarantee you, no matter what, whether they won or lost in overtime, Matt Eberflus would still be here.
I'm going to go one up on you. Had the whole situation played out exactly as it is, complete boneheaded mishandling of timeouts and the clock, and Caleb Williams had saved your ass by completing that pass at the end of the game, getting a touchdown, he'd still be here.
Yes. Yes. It took that exact sequence of events to end it. Because, listen, you can easily go back to last week's game against the Vikings and say, well, the Bears were down 10 and under 2 minutes, and they were able to come back and tie the game, even though they lost in overtime. It was absurd that we got to overtime, even though we still lost the heartbreaker. It wasn't like losing to the Packers on the blocked field goal or the Hail Mary. So you saw that scenario play out, and that team looked dead throughout much of the game, but that rally for the time saved Matt Eberflus another week. And now this, I mean, I'm going to say this too. Had they gotten blown out, I think Matt Eberflus is still here yesterday. If that was a blowout, I still think he'd be here.
Can I read you some stats?
No, but sure.
The Bears are the first team since 1955 Philadelphia Eagles to have a positive point differential through 12 games with only 4 or less wins.
That's insane.
And was that tweeted out by fans? No, that was tweeted out by the marquee network Bear Show.
Yep.
221 coaches have had 20 plus career games decided by 7 points or fewer, so one score. Matt Eberflus' 227 win percentage in those games ranks dead last in NFL history. Was that tweeted out by a fan? That was tweeted out by the Associated Press.
Yeah, it's a 5-19 record in one score games.
Since turnovers were first tracked in 1933, the Bears are the first team to go on a 6-game losing streak without committing multiple turnovers in any of those games. Was that tweeted out by a fan? That was tweeted out by Courtney Cronin. The Bears are now 101, 25, and 2 when they don't turn it over on offense and take the ball away at least once on defense since 1942. 4 of those 25 losses have come in the month of November. Was that tweeted out by a fan? That was tweeted out by Kevin Fishbane.
My goodness.
So it is like media is calling them out.
Yeah, as they should. And here are the final numbers, man, on the Matt Eberflus era. 14-32. That is a winning percentage of 304. You were 2-13 versus the NFC North. You were 2 for 10 in challenges.
2-14 with that loss.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. It was even worse.
This must be outdated. Okay.
Do you know how many wins Matt Eberflus has in his 3-year career against teams with a winning record?
3?
1.
1.
1.
The Lions last year, right?
I believe so. He's 5-22 in games where he was trailing. And makes it worse is Evan Byard gotten one more tackle in yesterday's game. He would have been the leading tackler in all 5 of the Bears' last 5 games.
Really?
Why would your safety be your leading tackler in 5 straight games?
Especially against teams that run the ball a lot.
It's so bad. And I don't understand the folks that were saying, we should let Eberflus coach the rest of the season. It only had the potential to be worse.
I really think that ended last night. I think those people were like, yeah, no, you can't keep doing this. I truly do believe that. But before the game, you are right. There were some people that said that. I won't disagree there.
I forgot, who was it? Why am I drawing a blank on his name? He's a big Cubs fan. He fills in on the score. He went to Michigan. Old timer. He had the medical incident last year at Hallis Hall. Man, I'm having an old man moment. Anyway, he was on the radio last night saying, as much as I think he should get fired, you have to give him credit for some of these comebacks in the second half.
What?
And it just boggles my mind is uh you you have a situation where he's the part of the problem of why there's so many holes dug into the first half. This team is not ready to play at all. They're not prepared. We've seen this time in and time out. Every season. First year we like, well, this is a bad roster. And then that last year I was like, well, maybe there's something to this. And then this year, it just lack of preparation. And it
Or yeah,
and it hurts the most is what is the S in the hits principle? The thing that this man touted from day one when he was hired. What is the S in the hits principle?
shit.
Situational smarts. What happens in a situation when there's no time left on the clock? That man has no smarts.
No, the opposite of smarts.
I, uh, I just um,
And that's the acronym. That is what won them over. I guarantee you that acronym is what won the Bears over in 2022.
uh, I just can't believe that this went on so long. And I'm gonna say I recognize that Ryan Poles came into a really tough situation and he's done some very good things. Bringing Matt Eberflus back for this season is enough to cost him his job.
I think he at least has to feel heat from that. Like he has to address it. He has to feel heat from it because I don't think everybody in that building wanted to make that move. But Ryan Poles, before the season, stuck out for him last January. Now, obviously, he made the call to fire him last night slash this morning. But listen, you could have made things so much easier for Caleb Williams had you just raised your bar and you said, you know what? We might have gone from 3 to 7 wins last year, but we blew 3 historic games. We had to fire Luke Getzey. We had to fire other coaches due to non related football things. That should be enough right there to say, you know what? We need to make a change. And you know what? We can make the change justifiably because we're going to get a new quarterback. We're going to hit the reset button. And I don't think anybody is going to question us why. It would all make sense. Go out and get an elite head coach to bring in your rookie quarterback. Your rookie quarterback now is going to be playing in his rookie year for 2 head coaches and 2, maybe 3 offensive coordinators if Thomas Brown is calling the head coaching duties, but not calling the offensive plays. Now, Caleb Williams has shown a lot of good things, and he might be able to overcome some of that. But regardless, it is not a situation you want to put your rookie quarterback in, especially the most important rookie quarterback you ever had.
Yeah. And, you had the opportunity last season to put Ben Johnson in place. Look at the magic he has done with Jared Goff. Sean McVay got rid of Jared Goff because he didn't think he could win a Super Bowl with him. And Ben Johnson has taken Jared Goff. And I'm not saying Jared Goff has no talent. He went number 1 overall. But he struggled coming into this league, and Sean McVay didn't think he could fix him. Ben Johnson not only fixed him, has him as a MVP candidate, and has that offense just absolutely motoring. And I know it's not all Jared Goff. It is they just dominate on the run, and but they have one dynamic pass catcher as a wide receiver.
It's all they need.
And they just, you could have had that man in the building. He had interest in the job. You could have had him. You could have, although Jim Harbaugh, I think would have ends up rubbing people the wrong way. You could have had Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately, I don't think the McCaskies would have ever gone for that, and it's sad.
yeah, but you could have. And if nothing else, Jim might have been the right man to change the perception of this team from losers to winners. because he's not going to have a loser. He may not win, but he's not going to have losers. He's going to instill a winning attitude and change that building. So even if you have to, you bring him in and it goes awry and you bring in somebody else, he's already done the hard work of setting that foundation.
Well, and keep this in mind too. The Chargers were kind of the Bears of the AFC in the sense of they played a lot of close games and they lost a lot of tough ones. And then here comes Jim Harbaugh, and all of a sudden, okay, things are looking more stable and you've been winning. I don't think they're a great team, but boy, I'll tell you, this team, this Bears team would have more than 4 wins if Jim Harbaugh was their head coach. I can guarantee that
Oh,
because
absolutely.
you would be more prepared for games. Everyone would be in focus. I'll tell you one thing, Tariq Stevenson would not be doing what he did on that Hail Mary if Jim Harbaugh was the coach.
Nope.
Not a chance he would have done that. It goes to show how important coaching is in the NFL just by preparedness,
I
just
mean,
by all of that.
I'm going through the schedule, and uh, they likely beat the Texans with Jim Harbaugh. They likely beat the Colts. Uh, they definitely beat the Commanders. I don't think there's anything about the Cardinals. They probably beat the Patriots because the Patriots are terrible. Um, they probably beat the Packers. I don't know about the Vikings.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one, and they probably win that game yesterday. At
Uh,
least send it to overtime. But that's there's there's definite. I put my life on it. They beat the Packers with that kick. They're not getting a block field goal there. They're
oh,
beating
they
the
would have gone for it. They would have gone and tried to get
probably.
more yards in that situation.
They definitely beat the Patriots. Bears came in so not prepared for that.
That was such a because that was the end of Shane Waldron.
Yeah, you definitely beat the Commanders because you are not going to be not prepared for a Hail Mary. I bet I would put money, big money down that the Commanders don't even get that 15-yard completion that set up the Hail Mary.
Matt
They don't even get
Eberflus
that.
said, "What's the difference?" Like,
That
dude,
that was the beginning of the downfall. Is you put side by side Matt Eberflus and Dan Quinn. Matt Eberflus says that didn't matter. We didn't concern ourselves. It wasn't important. Dan Quinn was like, that was key to doing it. Like Tom Brady said, that was key to doing that. When the greatest quarterback of all time and a longtime coach in this league, who was the winning coach in the game, talk about, yeah, that was real important. That was a big one. And Eberflus didn't even understand that.
it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I'm like, do you not understand how like basic math works? You know that your chances go down when it's further away to throw the ball to the end zone.
Yeah, it's just mind numbing. Uh,
Never recovered from that. Never ever recovered from that.
no, not it. And it was so important to pull that game out. And because you knew that that remaining schedule was tough. The you have 3 teams in your division that are likely going to make the playoffs. And two of them are probably, maybe all 3 are contenders to go to the Super Bowl. It was so important to have a cushion built up going into that uh end of the season divisional schedule, and you didn't do it. You didn't do it.
Nope.
Your
Nope.
team quit on you after that play. And I still will stand by the fact that in that Hail Mary, Cole Kmet and Roma Dunze should have been out there.
Yes, I
That's what
agree.
that's what you do is you put a big guy out there, put a tall guy out there. Cole Kmet is not going to get bodied out. He's going to be in there bodying people, and he's tall and he's big. He's just got to bat the ball down. Roma Dunze is tall, can jump higher than probably anybody on that field. have them out there. I'll, I'll say that that'll be a hill I die
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
on. So, do you want to talk about potential head coaches, or should we talk about the game yesterday?
We could talk a little bit about the game yesterday first, then go into coaching.
So, I think that defense had quit. Is look at how they got gashed, and I worried about that. It's not like they were the stoutest team against the run, but the fact that they they were giving up 8, 9 yards a run was just just unreal from a team that's you think is really playing hard.
I mean, the Lions are so good on
They
the
are
run.
good.
They're so good. And you know what? That should have been a blowout.
It absolutely should have been. And that is a ding on Ben Johnson is he should have just kept running that ball like that for the second half.
Right. That's what I would have done. And I think that when I look at yesterday's game and you saw some of the adjustments that they did make, like, wow, you finally started to put more blitzing on Jared Goff. You know how you beat Jared Goff on the pass? You get pressure on him. Like, where was that? Or when Jared Goff was making passes early on, he had all day to throw. You got, I mean, every play the Lions got was a massive chunk play until they got to the red zone, which has been kind of the Bears' MO. But how many times did we see them get inside the Bears 40 on like 2 plays?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they just if they didn't the Lions didn't make dumb plays down in the red zone, that could have been a just an absolute blowout at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those situations where you look at the actual like in-game play, you look at time of possession, you look at number of first downs, you look at overall yards. Everything there should have said the score should have been like 33 to nothing. And it was 16 to nothing. And you're like, you don't feel like you're in the game, but you kind of are in the game. And then the offense, which took until the last minutes of the first half to just get a first down, Caleb started finding a rhythm. They started moving the ball. All of a sudden, he's hooking up with Keenan Allen again. He's making big plays. Here comes the offense. Caleb Williams is the only quarterback so far this season to have more than one passing touchdown against the Lions defense. The only one, and he had 3 passing touchdowns just in that second half alone. I the
He
way
also has he also has the highest quarterback rating against the Lions this year.
wasn't Sam Darnold a little higher?
Mm,
I thought he was like 100. Caleb was like 97.
maybe I missed maybe I but it was close. It was
It was close, yes.
Caleb played exceptionally well against the Lions in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have looked at the first half stats, the fact that he finished with over 250 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, it's like, wow, you took a disastrous day in the office and had a pretty good day at the office numbers wise. Yes, the completion percentage wasn't that good, but you still threw for over 250 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and no interceptions, breaking that rookie record of consecutive passes without a pick. I mean, that's the thing. Caleb Williams has not turned the ball over so far. I think he's due for a game where he turns the ball over a few times, but he hadn't over the past few games, even though there were a few balls that could have been picks, but you could say that about any quarterback.
Any quarterback. But yeah, Caleb Williams has the rookie record for most completion or most pass attempts without an interception.
Yeah. Wasn't Kyler Murray the last
Kyler
record holder?
Murray, yeah, he passed Kyler Murray yesterday, and then CJ Stroud was third. Um, but yeah, Caleb Williams finished with a 97.8 quarterback rating, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Yeah, it's a pretty good day at the office.
But the first half was abysmal, not being able to move the ball. And I'm not saying Caleb Williams is the greatest, but Caleb, the thing he has to work on is he's got some terrible footwork. And the good thing about that is footwork is easiest of the mechanics. It is by far and away the easiest thing to fix.
Does he
Is
take dap chances with Bing Crosby?
I would hope so. Um, is a good head coach will come in this offseason and work on that and have him work on it through the offseason. Come in because if you fix Caleb's footwork, he might he might be a top three quarterback in this league.
Yeah, I mean, we saw early on too, the result of some of that bad footwork. There were a few plays where Caleb had somebody. I was it DJ
The
Moore or
DJ
Robert
Moore one where
Duze?
DJ was wide open. DJ Moore was wide open, could have scored a touchdown at the end of the game, and he missed
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
And that one he was under pressure, but still, it's better footwork. You're going to get better accuracy on some of those.
right, exactly. And obviously, you look at the offensive line, and towards the end, that one sack where he just had no chance, nobody was blocked. You're still going to see that. I don't want to say the offensive line is good by any means, but at least we've seen it hold up a little better, I feel like, under Thomas Brown. You still need to really freaking work on it, but I mean, some of those games early in the season when Caleb had no chance, or even mid-season when Waldron was still here, didn't he get sacked like 8 times against the Patriots, a team that like never gets sacks?
Yep.
At least you see more of a moving pocket and you see things. It's still not good, but it's not as bad as it was. We'll see how that goes the rest of the year because everybody just keeps getting banged up. But, you look at the learning moments for Caleb and yeah, you're going to have some gaffes, you're going to have some mistakes, you're going to have some ugly moments. We've had some very ugly moments with the rookie quarterback, but that's part of the deal.
Yeah, and I will say is since Thomas Brown took over, that both tackles have played significantly better to the point where I feel that you just need to upgrade those interior offensive linemen where you can live with those tackles.
Yeah, I mean, you still want to get some really good depth in there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But you're not the good part about it is if you have to upgrade a tackle, you're looking at first round. If you're upgrading guard and center, you're not looking first round. You're most likely you're looking at those second round picks. So that leaves that first round pick to get a stud defensive lineman. Because ultimately, I mean, that's where you have to build is those trenches. It's clear that that's the weakness of your team, both
Um,
sides.
well, I mean, the one thing I said yesterday was the Lions showed you what your weaknesses are, coaching and the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. And so the Bears have, you know, what's looking like three picks are in the first two rounds, so definitely. But one one will be in the top 10 most likely, and the other two will be top 10 in the second round. So you could very well add yourself a stud defensive tackle or an edge rusher with that first pick. And then your two second rounders, you can nab yourself arguably the best center in the draft and the best guard in the draft, potentially, or at least right at the top. So suddenly, with those picks, and then you add a free agent, guard, and then you've got center guard, and both tackles fixed, and your offensive or your defensive line significantly better, and you still have a metric poop ton of money to spend.
Right, exactly. You're not in cap hell here.
um, but I am concerned is Darnell Wright got carted off yesterday, and I
Yeah.
I don't know what the status is.
Yeah, you know what? It sucks to see. And I hope that I know Darnell Wright hasn't been that good this year compared to last year. He's had some gaffes, but
But look at it. Look at his PFF grades since the play calling switched.
I know. That's the thing.
I think his PFF grade across the Thomas Brown games is over 80, both run and pass, which is what we wanted.
Right.
Um, but man, I hope that's not a uh an ACL or something. I'm hoping it's just he's a big dude and they just carted him off out of precaution and it's something like a sprain or
Well, if it is minor, the good news is you kind of have a mini bye here before your next game.
yeah. I mean, even if he's I just my concern is I don't want anything to impact his off season with the Bears.
That's
If
fair.
if
Yeah.
he misses the rest of the season, but off season he's able to do full workouts and be there for training camp, then I'm cool. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Um, but yeah, it's uh, Caleb Williams though has gutted it out and he has shown you things he can do and the special things he has. And there was one play in particular where he scrambled and he saw he wasn't going to make it, and he just did a little tiny dump to DJ Moore, who was not ready. He was not prepared for that because it looked like he was about to go out of bounds, and just dumped it off and ended up picking up the first down and making just an amazing play right with a defender in his face. It's he is picking things up at such an electric pace that you know I, I'm I think we all know that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, but I'm just trying to imagine Caleb Williams with Andy Reid as his head coach and a year to sit and watch what Caleb would look like.
Oh boy, that's a dream. That's a dream.
Is all of those footwork things would have been cleaned up, complete grasp from day one of the play calling and the play calling designed around his skill set because Andy Reid's play calling changed from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes
Mm-hmm.
based on their skill sets and what they're comfortable with and just just something you dream about.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. And, to make the point about the footwork, you saw some much better footwork against Minnesota at home, and we saw the results of that game for him.
Yeah.
You saw, and I really liked how he stepped up in the pocket that game, and that's what I want to see more of. Because we've seen him throw some dimes in that position, and we see him throw well, on the move when he's going towards the sideline. Yes, the deep ball still needs work. He had a few good deep shots yesterday, but you still want consistency and work on that. That's a big thing. And one thing I was concerned about at halftime yesterday was Caleb Williams on the road because the road numbers don't look nearly as good. I don't count London. That was really more neutral, though more of a home game too, because you had more Bears fans there than Jags fans. But you look at some of his rougher games, whether it was Houston or Indianapolis or Arizona. But the fact that he went into what right now might be the toughest arena to play in the NFL at Ford Field. The fact that he rebounded from a bad first half and had that really good second half, I think is a good sign.
Yes. Yes, very much so. Um, but I I'm just it's just concerning to me the way that this offense how much it sputters. And a legit concern I have about Thomas Brown is he's too pass heavy. He needs to balance it with that run. And it was the same thing he did in Carolina. And I think he's doing some great things. And I would love for him to stay on with this team next year, regardless of who the head coach is in some capacity. And they have the opportunity to do that because he's under contract. They don't have to let him go. Um,
If he's Caleb's whisperer, I think you have to keep him around as best you can.
yeah, I mean, you don't have to. He could be offensive. I mean, if you bring in Ben Johnson, you could have Thomas Brown as your offensive coordinator, and Ben Johnson is going to be your play caller. Uh, he just helps install the plays and things like that. Um, and he still gets that offensive coordinator salary and um, keeps working with Caleb. Uh, that would be a dream, and I think I think any new head coach that comes in is going to have to really consider that.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but that leads into our discussion we want to have about potential Bears head coaches, and I just want to lead off with something. There are two things. Number one, Thomas Brown may be auditioning for a head coaching job.
Oh, very much.
I like what he's done so far. Don't jump the gun.
He's auditioning 100% for this Bears job, but whatever tape he puts forward from the time he took over for Shane Waldron to the end of the season, everything he's doing is being watched by the rest of the league.
Correct. Correct.
I don't know if anybody else other than the Bears would truly consider hiring him at this point, just because of this, the small body of work. But it would be the Bears most likely to hire him if things go well. But that that possibility is there, and if the Bears play better these last several games, then there's a real shot that if he's not with the Bears next year, he's a head coach somewhere.
Sure. Absolutely. And I was kind of like you, where I was on the side of like, let Hightower Washington be an interim head coach. But if there's an opportunity to audition, okay, fine. The other thing,
I mean,
I'm
to be
not,
fair, is mostly when we were saying that he was either the passing game coordinator still, or he was the newly minted offensive coordinator.
oh, yeah, I mean, before, yeah, absolutely. Things
And
obviously
yeah.
changed.
So if you're Poles and Kevin Warren, if you have no interest and no consideration for Brown to be your head coach next year, then you don't do this. You put somebody else in to be the interim. But if you have any suspicion, any possibility that he could be a player for your head coaching position next year, then yeah, this was the right move.
Sure. And you know what? How many times did we see a quote from him and say, wow, I really like that? I really like what he said. I like his moxie. I like his persona. When they showed him in the booth against Green Bay celebrating the touchdown, you're kind of like, I kind of like that. It might sound cheesy, corny. Maybe we're overreading it, but body language does tell things. And when you saw the body language when Eberflus and Waldron were in charge versus when, Thomas Brown comes in with Caleb, and now we'll see what it's like when Thomas Brown is the head coach. We're going to see how he handles it. But you know what? The way I see it is, listen, he either shows you he could be a worthy head coach, or maybe he shows you he's a worthy coordinator, but not quite ready to be a head coach. There's no other stakes. The most important things right now is Caleb Williams and seeing what Thomas Brown can do. You're not playing for a playoff spot. That's gone. Winning, losing games, you're looking at what Caleb Williams can do and the technical aspects of it. You want to make sure that if Thomas Brown is under consideration, he does the X's and O's right. Clock management, challenges, just the preparedness of the team, the body language of the team. Those are all things we're going to be looking at with Thomas Brown. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not even betting it's going to happen. But maybe he was the diamond in the rough that we've been looking for. Maybe. Who knows? We'll see. I want to see how he leads this team. I want to see how players respond. I want to see what he has to say in press conferences. We can, look at the value of press conferences in sports all we want, but the way you present yourself and what you say in a press conference, even if you are walking on eggshells, I think that matters more in the NFL than any other sport.
Right.
Here's another point I want to get to. The big name is Ben Johnson. That's the big name. We
Very much
know
so.
this guy is an offensive master. Here's one thing, and I'm not saying I don't want him. We have no idea if he can be a head coach.
Nope.
We have no idea because what do we see all the time? The hot coordinator. the big red hot coordinator that has head coach all over him. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Matt Nagy was a legitimate hot coordinator, not to the level of Ben Johnson, but people around the league were pointing at Matt Nagy saying, there's head coach right there, material. You just don't know.
I will say this though, is is a lot of times here's the predicament. A lot of times you get a hotshot coordinator, and it's a learning curve to be a head coach versus the coordinator.
Correct.
And just like it's any step up in position, it's a learning curve. And so it's a learning curve there. Most of the time, teams aren't looking for a head coach because they had somebody retire and they were a good team. It's they were a bad team and a coach is stepping in there to a shitty situation. Right?
Right.
I mean, you look at Brian Dable. I can't his record has been abysmal, but I can't evaluate him because he's been saddled with a terrible quarterback. And you have a general manager that we watched look like a slice of bologna on Hard Knocks, where he's, should we get rid of Saquon Barkley? And then Saquon Barkley is putting together one of the single best running back seasons in the history of the NFL.
You can make an argument that Saquon Barkley could be the MVP this year.
Very much so. Very much so. He is 100% buoying that offense for the Eagles. And you had a GM that just let him go and to keep Danny Dimes. And now Danny Dimes, where did he sign? I forget.
Minnesota.
Minnesota, where he thinks he might end up playing. But or at least getting his career resurrected. But you have your head coach, Brian Dable, who did awesome with Buffalo, and they struggled when he left. And he comes in, he's like, I don't have, his 1 year he didn't have any quarterbacks. He was playing with Tommy Cutlets, and then the next year it's you've got no Saquon, but you've got Danny Dimes, and Danny's just
who's bad,
and you don't have any talent. It's just an absolutely
that organization's a mess.
Yeah. So it's how do you judge this? Like, how do you judge him? So it's a lot of times I bet there's coordinators that may have done a good job had they gotten to the point where the roster was good enough to compete, because you can't compete with a bad roster. It's not like a head coach just comes in and turns this roster around. But the Bears situation is you've got two next year. You'll have two really good wide receivers. You have a potential superstar quarterback. You've got a bunch of playmakers on defense, and you've got like potentially $100 million in cap space and a top 10 draft pick. Like the framework is there. So a coach coming in has no excuse to not make this a better team.
Correct. I mean, you could almost look at the same thing with Matt Nagy. It was obviously there's a lot of things you could break down there, but you remember when Matt Nagy came in and you came off a really frustrating year with John Fox, but what did everybody say? Like, this team is close. I remember going into 2018, a lot of people were pointing to them saying they could be the next Rams, where they were down and out at the bottom and then they shoot their way to the top. People knew that team was close. They had a good defense. They had a rookie quarterback who was showing some promise. And it's like, well, you bring in a better head coach for these guys and you go make a big swing in Khalil Mack, and all of a sudden you win the division. Now, obviously things didn't work out in the long run, but this more than ever is a scenario where somebody comes in and you're like, listen, there's a lot of groundwork already here. Matt Eberflus, terrible head coach, but the scenario was completely different. Ryan Poles was stripping this thing down. And that's why year one of Matt Eberflus, we didn't really know what to make of him because you were tanking. Now, he never impressed me as a head coach, as a speaker by any means. In fact, I rolled my eyes quite a bit. But like as a head coach, it was hard to formulate an opinion. But once you actually got some talent on your team, you're like, okay, well, you see some talent, you see where you could have won these games, but you didn't. And you can look at your head coach here. This is where you really need to get this right because you have a roster that can compete even with its holes, and you can't be taking away wins from the jaws of victory. So it's got to at least look attractive to a number of suitors, right?
Absolutely.
Especially if Caleb Williams looks really good. Like, what if Caleb Williams keeps doing what he's doing and he finishes with 20 some touchdowns and 3,700 passing yards? For a rookie, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a respectable season for anybody, really. It's not amazing, but it's pretty darn good for a rookie and solid for any quarterback. I mean, if Caleb Williams, let's say he finishes with like 3,750 passing yards and 22 touchdown passes. Like that right there is one of the best QB seasons ever in franchise history. Isn't that nuts?
Yep.
We'll see. I mean, your schedule ain't getting any easier. Because you have to play all those NFC North teams one more time. You have a game against Seattle, and you have a game in San Francisco. I know San Francisco is banged the hell up and not the team they were last year, but that's still going into San Francisco and playing Shanahan. And you know what? Here's my dream scenario. Bears go and kill the 49ers. The 49ers have had enough of Shanahan. They let him go. The Bears bring in Shanahan.
I mean,
It's
that's a
not gonna
no-brainer.
it's not gonna happen, but if Shanahan was available, that is a no-brainer.
Absolutely no-brainer.
Even with Ben Johnson, like it's like Shanahan would be the guy. Could you imagine if you got Shanahan as your head coach and Ryan Poles beat the crap out of that offensive line? What do we know about Shanahan? He makes everything go in motion. And that's exactly what you'd want to see. Wouldn't that be great?
Just an FYI, Caleb Williams is number 27 in all-time career uh, Bears passing records.
That's hilarious.
In in partway through his first season, he's number 27 all time.
With
And,
two offensive, soon to be three, possibly offensive coordinators.
and what do they have? 5 games left.
Yeah.
So I think they say he's on pace for 3,700 yards this season,
Yes.
which would put him at number 21.
We're not even talking about like that's the 21st best passing season. That's literally 21 best passing yards total in a career.
Yeah, it's unreal. Um, and wait, where is he? And if you just go by career touchdown passes, he's 29.
That's ridiculous.
29. And let's see. Let's say, and he likely will be 23 or 22 by the time the season ends. But back to potential head coaches here is I think the rest of the universe of Bears fans are all in on Ben Johnson. And I like the fact that he's very choosy and that he pulled out of jobs and he could have been a head coach right now. He's looking for the right situation. And the whole time he's being more comfortable in that role of being offensive coordinator. He's learning from Dan Campbell about what that building should look like and feel like. He's got a lot of years with Dan Campbell absorbing all of that. So
Right.
I think he's one that's going to get thrown around that I think we should just definitely dump a bucket of cold water on is Bill Belichick.
Yeah, yeah. I just don't think that's a good fit.
It's not a good fit. I mean, here's here is the only thing I can even say that would be a positive towards it is you are a loser organization. Bill Belichick will turn that around. He will absolutely turn that around. But you cannot, he has been abysmal as a GM when he did both hats. He's a bad GM. And so if you're like, no, you do not have power over roster decisions, you are the head coach. And uh then maybe that's a possibility, but where you're like, all right, he's a stopgap for a couple of seasons to just change the mood of this team and change the culture. But I just can't see him working well with Georgie Porgy. Is Bill Belichick's going to come in there with his orange juice and snap all of his crayons in half?
I hate purple drinks.
Oh my God, it's just I don't think it's a good fit. And he's 72 years old, and he's a year removed from being in the NFL, and he was fired for a reason.
Frankly, I don't even think he'd want the job to come here, even with Caleb Williams.
Well, he seems to have publicly bad things to say about Caleb Williams,
Exactly.
uh,
So,
that he didn't say about Mac Jones. Just putting that out there.
yeah, huh,
Um,
yeah.
Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of the Bills. That's another name.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's done a great job of turning things around with the offense in Buffalo. Um, after they fired Ken Dorsey, but he had when he was the offensive coordinator under Matt Rule in Carolina, he got fired because he was so bad.
Yeah.
So he scares me, and I know Carolina is one of those like just toxic places that it's hard to win in. And Matt Rule was not a good head coach, and was Joe Brady was probably a scapegoat. But I I would need to see more history, more uh a track record of him doing well before I would ever consider him.
That type of move is not reaching for the stars. I want them to reach for the stars. I want them to reach for the very best. That could be a move that could potentially be okay. I just don't see the highest ceiling with that move.
Yeah. Then there's the somebody that they considered for offensive coordinator when they hired Shane Waldron, Liam Cohen, who's now the Buccaneers offensive coordinator. He's from the McVay coaching tree, but this is his first, college offense or non-college offensive coordinator job. Again, I don't think that's reaching for the stars. Maybe,
No.
maybe at one point or some point, just not now. He's very young. He's in his 30s. Um, but you're gonna hate this one. Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator for the Vikings.
Okay. I was thinking the other day about Brian Flores and how I'd feel about that. And I have some conflicted feelings because I think Brian Flores is a very smart football man.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I think that if you want to talk about preparedness and discipline, I think you are 100% getting that from Brian Flores. I really
I
do.
I just wonder is Tua hated his guts.
That's the thing. Is he right for Caleb Williams and what they're trying to do? I just don't think he's the best fit here.
No. Should he be a head coach? Yeah, probably. He's very good, very smart. I agree with you. It's just not right for this organization.
I feel like the Jets might be a better fit for him than Chicago. That's just me.
I mean, you just got rid of a guy just like him in
But
Robert
Aaron
Sala.
Rodgers is going to be gone next year.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, um, I mean, my dream scenario, and I've said it, I'm sticking with it, is Ben Johnson as your head coach slash play caller, and Robert Sala as your defensive coordinator.
Sure.
If for Robert Sala, you get a really nice roster of players and a a team that should make the playoffs, and you get to, rehabilitate your reputation, and it's probably a short stint because you probably jump back into the head coaching circuit. But I think that's a good fit because you've got somebody that was a head coach. So Ben Johnson doesn't have to have so many new faces on there. It can be somebody that's done that job. And
Right.
he's not one of those old grizzled uh you know defensive coordinators. He's a young, was he 43, 44? Like
Hmm.
he's still in his prime where, but he's been a head coach. That's my goal there. Um, let's see. There's Mike Kafka, the Giants offensive coordinator. Um, he was a former quarterback under Andy Reid. And I, again, I don't see that. Um, there's the Brian Johnson, the pass game coordinator for the Commanders. Again, I don't see that. Why would you pass up the offensive coordinator for the Commanders for their pass game coordinator if
Cliff
you can do that?
Kingsbury.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cliff Kingsbury's not going to be a nominee for the Bears. I think there's a little bit of bad blood unless Ryan Poles is let go. If Ryan Poles is allowed to choose this new head coach, it won't be.
I don't see it being Cliff. I think the odds are low, not zero, but low.
Um, let's see. Thomas Brown, obviously. Um, Marcus Freeman, the head coach of Notre Dame,
No
former Bear.
thanks.
He's a former Bears draft pick, so he's got ties. And he has really done good things with Notre Dame. I don't think it's the right fit, but that name is going to get that. I would be shocked if he doesn't at least get
An interview.
an interview or consideration.
Sure.
Um, who else? Uh, Kellen Moore, probably the Eagles offensive coordinator. Um, but he's doing well in Philadelphia, but man, there were times he was brutal in Dallas.
Well, I ask this in Dallas. How much of that is him or Mike McCarthy?
Tough to say. And how much is it was it him? How much was it Mike McCarthy? And how much was it Jerry Jones putting together dog turd rosters?
Yeah, boy. Did you watch any of the bowl between Cooper Rush and Drew Lock yesterday?
Oh man. I felt bad for Drew Lock after he got passed over by multiple quarterbacks after Danny Dimes got cut. And then I saw him play and I was like, oof, I feel bad for anybody that fell for his bullshit.
I think Drew Lock is a likable enough guy, but just oh yeah, he's bad.
Yeah, he was so bad. Um,
By the way, that's got to be a guy who's gone next, right? Mike McCarthy has to be gone after this year, right?
oh yeah, he's got to be gone. Didn't
Oh,
he leave?
please no. Don't eat Bears. Don't even.
They're going to interview him. They're going to interview him. And I will say this: due diligence. He coached your rival. He coached against you for how many years and kicked your ass. He's been a head coach a long time. I think you should 0% consider him. 0%. 100. I'm right there with you. 0% interest in him. It seems smart to
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 talk to him.
to talk to him. Bring him in. Ask him his thoughts. How would he do things differently? What's his view from being a former opposing head coach for twice a year for how many years? Just seems smart. And then you just take that knowledge. It's kind of like when you interviewed Cliff Kingsbury. You didn't consider Cliff Kingsbury, but you tried to get something from him. Like, not everybody you're going to interview is going to be a candidate that's on your final list. It's sometimes you're just like, you know what? I want to hear what they have to say.
No, you're right. And I do 100% agree with you. Georgie Porgy should keep his purple crayon away from a piece of paper to give a list to Ryan Poles Ryan
Yes.
Poles should interview every single person possible that he can and not do what David Kaplan just reported and having them fly coach. Did you? Yeah, literally
What?
said that. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God. And I want Soup and Tanisha nowhere near this decision.
Well, that's another thing I said this morning. I said, listen, don't let the path of your franchise be dictated by Soup Campbell, Ernie Accorsi, Bill Polian,
Trace
or
Armstrong.
or Trace Armstrong. Trace Armstrong has basically run the Bears the past few years.
Yeah, I want him nowhere near that building.
Soup Campbell.
Um,
Guys, I'm on the phone with Soup. Hold the phone.
yeah,
He's giving
what?
me advice.
Hold on. You're considering Ben Johnson. You know how much money he's going to cost? Soup is telling me that we should hire Mike McCarthy. Soup's voice is loud in this building. Uh,
I do have a question about Mike McCarthy though. One, do you think he's going to get another head coaching job?
no.
Two, let's say he's neither a coordinator or a head coach, but someone just to have on your staff. Like, do you remember a few years ago when the Bears had Brad Childress on their staff?
Yes, under Matt Nagy.
Would you consider having Mike McCarthy in some sort of role like that with the Bears, knowing how he's worked with quarterbacks in the past? I know Dak has his faults, but I mean, he's worked with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers is kind of the guy who Caleb likes to model after.
I,
I'm just throwing that out there.
I wouldn't hate it. Like I said, I'm a big believer in having experience in the building.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be your head coach, but
God no. God no.
if you have a young head coach, cushion him with experience around him. Like I said, is just you can't have a situation like, obviously you're going to let Ben Johnson pick his defensive coordinator, but I would be very strongly encouraging him to find somebody that has that coaching experience multiple years as a defensive coordinator.
Right. So, again, not pining for Mike McCarthy to be an offensive coordinator or a head coach, but if you had the opportunity to say, hey, come be on our staff, come sit in the press box, come be, an offensive specialist or whatever they call a lot of those, guys, those advisors, whatever. I, I don't know if he would accept that type of job. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if there was a way to hire Mike McCarthy, that'd be the only way I do it, and I could see that actually having value as opposed to having him as a head coach.
Yeah, is have him you be your like offensive consultant or something along those lines. Um, even hell, make him your quarterback coach. I'm fine with
Sure,
that.
sure, that
Is
I could roll with that.
is look at some of the staffs over the past 10 years, and you've had staffs that were like had like four former head coaches on the team. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's it adds legitimacy. Is you don't get caught being over your head. Is you have some structure there. And the Bears have a young GM, and they have a president of football operations who's a stadium guy, and then you have an owner who sticks crayons up his nose. And and you know, so you've got to have some of that structure there. is is you look at what they did in Minnesota. They gave their young offensive minded head coach a veteran defensive coordinator, and that's that's been great.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, hey, the path of Dan Quinn is a really interesting one because it's kind of been up and down.
yeah,
That
uh,
happens though. I mean, that's part of football. You're part of that network. You take on different roles.
yeah. Like I that's why I really like Robert Saleh. Is that guy? He brings that. Ben Johnson is the cerebral, very quiet guy, and Robert Saleh is the scream and kick dirt, and he's the Dan Campbell attitude guy, and he was a hell of a defensive coordinator. And when the Jets hired him, everybody talked about what a home run that was.
Right.
And you ownership, I like you ownership and the general manager hamstrung him. Would he have been successful? I don't know. But he had a hell of a defense while he was there, but he had no quarterback, and then he ran afoul of Aaron Rodgers. So
That whole thing is a disaster. I mean, just an epic disaster. And in his prime, Aaron Rodgers, you could argue, was the best quarterback ever, at least the top three, at least top three. But in his advanced age, where he's nowhere near as good, you just see how toxic he is to have around. It's just an epic recipe for disaster.
you know, is the difference between old Tom Brady and old Aaron Rodgers is Tom Brady still took direction from the head coach. He didn't put, other than bringing Gronk in, he didn't have input on personnel decisions.
No, and he wanted the team to make moves he felt was best.
Yeah, and when he brought Gronk in, Gronk still had something left. Not a
He
whole lot,
did.
but it was he made those tough catches and where he trusted him. He's like, I just want this guy I can trust. And Gronk did that.
And they
Once,
won a Super Bowl.
yep. And other than that is they relied on the head coach to be the head coach. Tom Brady didn't, and I'm not a Tom Brady fan. And Tom Brady, he played quarterback. And Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers is playing general manager and shaman and offensive coordinator and quarterback and you know uh,
QAnon.
it's just like this guy just stay in your lane, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny with Aaron Rodgers because from like 2008 to I'd say 2016, you never really saw anything bad with him personally. Like he just seemed like a pretty down to earth guy who was just really darn good at football. And then things turned towards the end of the decade where, there was friction between him and the Packers front office, and he started spewing more and more BS. It's very possible this is a result of CTE and just hits to the head. I think that's a very likely possibility of it, but
It's
you just
possible.
kind of you saw the evolution of it because he wasn't always this type of guy. He just wasn't. And maybe that's just years of, you know, growing your status, so to speak, where it's like, well, obviously your first few years, as good as you are, you don't have the height or the bandwidth that other veteran quarterbacks have. And, as time went on, that could have changed. But boy, the evolution has just been pretty crazy.
Absolutely. um yeah, so Greg Roman, who's the offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh in San Diego, um he's a possibility. He's been around a long time. He was there when Lamar Jackson in Baltimore was a young player. Um, Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, uh, and probably Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator of the Texans. I mean, that sounds like, and Mike Vrabel. Those sound like your list of likely guys.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel is one where I could see that being a pretty solid consideration by them. Not saying they're going to hire him, but
Yeah, I mean, he's another one of those guys that he's going to change the culture and add toughness, and he's not going to. That guy, that guy is really smart. Regardless of other things, is that guy knows the rule book inside and out. He knows, like, he knows all of these, nuances of the game, and situationally, he is 10 steps ahead of most people. Is he a good coach? I don't think he's a bad one. The knock on him was he he was old school and didn't want to rely on any sort of advanced metrics or things like that, and just couldn't get the quarterback right there. Um, but he he had that team playing hard. Uh, and he's a three-time Super Bowl champion. He comes from the Belichick. He's the one guy from the Belichick tree that you feel like, could be a good coach. Um, it's not a home run, but it will change that culture there. I just wonder how well he's going to get along with Georgie Porgy.
Uh,
It's it's going to be like Olin and Georgie, because Georgie Porgy has this like facade of just being like this super nice guy, but he's got a mean streak in him too. He's dumb and mean sometimes. He could be very nice man, and but
well,
he's
Georgie Porgy and Olin Kreutz don't have the best relationship.
they do not. And I think Vrabel might be one of uh those ones. Um
Vrabel says, "There's nothing more I hate than a purple crayon."
uh just hold on. This Mike Vrabel comes in as your head coach, brings Bill Belichick in as his defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I'm sure Georgie Porgy would love that.
Georgie goes sprinting into Ryan Pohl's office. What did you do? The Wolves are in the building.
Just picturing George McCaskey just hauling ass from his office to Ryan Poles' office.
You just see Bill Belichick walking down the hall looking for Georgie to bully him.
Yeah, he's punching his fist in his hand. He's got a Letterman jacket on, and then Georgie's like shaking in a corner. Next thing you know, you have Bill Belichick like grab him and shove him into a locker.
Is Bill Belichick looks like a young tough from the 1950s. He's got a cigarette rolled into the sleeve of his t-shirt.
Greased hair.
He's got Converse All-Stars, but they're rolled up with tall white socks underneath. He's got he's got a coif in his hair. He's got his white t-shirt tucked so far into his underwear. And he's got one smoke just like glued to his bottom lip.
Georgie Porgy come to dinner. And then there's just George in his normal white shirt and tie and khaki pants
He,
getting shoved into a locker at Hallis Hall.
is is you see like the janitor walking by and he bangs three times on his office. He goes, "All clear, George." George just slips him a 20. He's like, "Thanks, Gus." Oh my God.
That is one of the funniest images in my head. Bill Belichick bullying Georgie Porgy.
Oh, I yeah, I just so I mean this coaching change had to go. I'm just there's a lot of room for this coaching decision to be a failure. There's
Of
not a lot
course,
of there's not a lot of home runs here. Um,
there's potential diamonds in the rough, but you won't know until it happens.
right. And that's why, as a Bears fan, you've got to hope that Shanahan gets fired, because the the 49ers fans don't know what they got. And this, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what situation this is. This is Andy Reid leaving the Eagles and going to the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is Shanahan comes in, he's going to pick a hotshot young offensive coordinator, knowing full well that he's going to be calling plays, but he's got him in his wings and he's going to be developing these guys. And he's got enough cachet and experience in this league, not only through his experience, but through his dad's years, because that nepotism in there is he's got a hell of a roll. Date myself. He's got a hell of a Rolodex of names he can pull in as a defensive coordinator, and you don't have to worry about him hiring a veteran defensive coordinator, because Shanahan is a veteran head coach. He doesn't need that support. So he can bring in a young guy that he thinks is a fire guy, and or he can bring in a veteran if he wants. But he's the world is his oyster coming in. That is just a home run there. And I think I would choose that over Ben Johnson, because Ben Johnson, I think, will be very good.
But there's still a lot of mystery to it.
There is some mystery. And but after those two, I have no idea who I would want because I mean, what if Shanahan doesn't get fired, and what if Ben Johnson says I'm not interested? Then
Right.
those are very real world possibilities, and then you're just looking through this list going, man, we are taking a big swing here and a big gamble. And plus, I'm going to throw another complicating factor in it is what if a coach doesn't want to come here because they feel that Ryan Poles is a lame duck general manager?
Yeah, I mean, the way they perceive things, you never know.
Um, so it's, I mean, there's a lot of good things here. Is you've got the young quarterback on the rookie contract. You've got two young stud wide receivers. You've got a bunch of good cornerbacks and one solid edge rusher and one solid defensive lineman in Javon Dexter. And you've got a good linebacking core and you've got a good tight end and you've got a bunch of cap room and good draft picks. So it seems like there's a lot of tools to work with in this job. It's you know it's historically it's been a bad job.
Right.
And all this to say is we've got a game next week.
Yep. San Francisco.
San Francisco, and they're open. San Francisco is opening up at almost a touchdown uh spread over you. They're favored by 6.
It would probably be a lot higher if it was last year, but yeah, it's still a notable spread.
That team is 5-6, and they're a 6-point favorite over you. They're they're 5-6 on a 2-game losing streak, and they are a 6-point favorite over you.
Yeah, well, they are at home too. San Francisco is, so
They're 3-3 at home.
yeah.
So, but the thing is they they're the number 7 rushing team.
Yeah, it's probably going to be another long day at the office for the defense. But again, I just want to see Caleb Williams out there and I want to see the technical aspects of Thomas Brown's coaching game.
Yeah, so all I want to see is, I just want healthy, and development at the quarterback position.
Yep, exactly.
Oh man, been hell of a couple days here.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. You ain't kidding.
Uh, do we want to talk about anything else, or did we did we do our purpose here today and talk about the Bear situation?
I think this was what we want to talk about. I mean, I don't really have much else to say about any other teams. Good luck to the Bulls in their play-in mid-season tournament, whatever, I guess. Thank God Bedard scored a goal the other day. And Cubs, White Sox, stop being cheap. That's all I got.
Oh man, the so tired of the cheapness.
Now, it's here to stay.
It really is. It really is. And I will say that the Cubs did sign Brooks Kriske.
Feels like you just made that up.
It really does. They should have a game is made up name Sean made up or real signee by the Cubs or White Sox.
Yeah, give a guess. Whoever gets the most wins a prize.
Ugh. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That would grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter/X, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! win. What a lucky break. The good Lord wants the Cubs to win.
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win. Cubs win. Cubs win.
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna